From his untouchable strikes to his feints and fakes that served him well during his last fight, here's why Israel Adesanya will defeat his longtime rival Alex Pereira at UFC 287. Let's get this rolling with something that Pereira can never match: Adesanya's fighting technique. He's arguably one of the best MMA strikers. There's no doubt about it. This 33-year-old fighter is a striking wizard, and he does a great job of hiding his strikes, making him totally unpredictable when he steps into the octagon.
Oh, he's hurt, man. Oh, another knockdown. Wow. Israel Adesanya.
That's one thing that boosts Adesanya's confidence. His smart defensive footwork is something that helped him to evade the explosive Yoel Romero's famous one-strike KO power at UFC 248. But Romero still made accusations that he ran away from him. Now, the former UFC middleweight champion usually begins by greeting his opponent with his most famous trick. You know what I'm talking about: his feints and fakes. He begins with his front side feint. He takes a half step forward and thrusts his shoulder in a way that disguises his jab. It's the boxer's way of getting reactions from his opponents. Doing the front side feints a couple of times helps him to read his opponents and prepare for his next attack. The fighter fakes his jab so much that the opponent's reflexes can't keep up. Once the real jab is in, he quickly proceeds with plenty of kicks and punches. Then the former UFC middleweight champion moves on with his second technique, the rear hip feint. It's a great way to disguise the low kick. The opponent never figures out what's coming next: a rear kick or a rear straight punch. His final trick is the Brazilian kick, and he's probably the best MMA striker to put it to good use. The deceptive technique fools the opponent into expecting a kick to the lower body, when really you're aiming for the head. His feints are how he won the biggest test of his young MMA career against well-rounder Derek Brunson at UFC 230. In the beginning, he defended a few takedowns from Brunson, but eventually Adesanya's constant feints managed to sneak in a thunderous knee, ultimately rocking Brunson. These three techniques are what make the Nigerian fighter so difficult to read. He appears so relaxed and calm during his bouts, but he's constantly faking directional changes swiftly. The opponent's reflexes shut down after several feints. They have no choice but to step forward and bring the fight to the last style bender. Now, it's not only his technique that's helped him become one of the best MMA fighters ever, it's also his ring experience. Think about it. None of his opponents have had his level of ring experience. He's famous for being a striker, but he had a whole professional kickboxing career where he knocked people senseless. He usually wins his fights that way. The 33-year-old's kickboxing career ran for 7 years, and that's also where he met his historic nemesis, Alex Pereira. Pereira has famously beaten the former middleweight champion once in the UFC. Back in November, he won the title from him at UFC 281. And now Israel is looking to reclaim the gold from the man that took it from him. They're set for a bout on April 8th in Miami. Their rivalry goes back to their kickboxing days. Poatan's score is 3-0 against Adesanya. He's beaten him twice in the Glory Kickboxing organization. So if anything, the upcoming bout between the rivals will be a redemption for the Nigerian fighter. Anyway, once he left kickboxing and joined the UFC, he went on to defeat some tougher opponents in the middleweight division. That made him one of the greatest UFC fighters. The 33-year-old also picked up the UFC interim middleweight champion title in his 5th match against Kelvin Gastelum. It was only his 5th fight. Then he went on to unify the title by defeating Robert Whittaker. He went on a 20-0 win streak where he beat up top-notch fighters in thrilling bouts like Anderson Silva and Paulo Costa. Currently, he has an impressive MMA record of 23 wins and 2 losses, and he's currently topping the UFC middleweight rankings. He's ranked at number 5 in the UFC men's pound-for-pound rankings. The opponent who stands in the octagon with him dreads the prolific kickboxer. After all, I'm not forgetting how his heavy kicks left a superhuman-like Romero with hideous bumps and lumps. His first UFC loss was Jan Blachowicz, so he's defeated everyone in the middleweight division except Pereira. That was his first middleweight loss, and I'm telling you, it's going to be his last. best. After all, Poatan never fought at Adesanya's level. He's the current UFC middleweight champion. The 35-year-old is also the first and only fighter to have 2 Glory titles in 2 weight classes simultaneously. That would be his former Glory middleweight and light heavyweight champion titles. Now, he has these titles to flex, but at the end of the day, he's never fought at the level of his arch-rival. Okay, well, there's no doubt that he has some impressive wins. He boasts a pro kickboxing record of 39 wins and 7 losses. His current MMA record is 7 wins and 1 submission loss, while his UFC career stands at a spectacular 4-0. He's on fire since he's sitting on a 7-fight win streak. But I'm unsure whether that matters, because he hasn't faced the competition that his opponent has. Pereira is famous for his powerful punches and kicks, but does that even matter when you haven't faced tough fighters like Gastelum and Błachowicz? I wonder if he would win against some of the big names like his historic rival did. Maybe this could be a little drawback for his upcoming rematch with the last stylebender. Their rivalry is one of the best storylines in combat sports history. Adesanya has proven himself to be one of the best MMA fighters over the years. His sense of distance is great with defensive footwork, something that the Brazilian fighter lacks. Since the former Glory middleweight champion relies on tall man defense, it's a weakness in his fighting style. The kickboxer is seen leaning back and fading away. He's good with the kicking range and his grappling is unmatched, but he's happy to trade from any range. That's really risky, because if he wants to land that deadly left hook with the last stylebender, he needs to close the distance. There are more flaws to his fighting styles. He has only 2 responses to aggression. He takes a step back and brings out his left hook, or he just moves away. His defense just shows how inexperienced he is compared to his rival. I've seen him get taken down a few times just because he's standing too tall to defend a double. There's no doubt that he's physically strong, but when it comes to stopping takedowns, I think he's relying a little too much on size and strength. Also, I can't help but notice how surprised he appeared when he missed his left hook against Bruno Silva. He froze entirely while Silva unleashed overhands and hooks on him. That's not how it should be. Now it seems like Adesanya has got a huge advantage for UFC 287. He's great at controlling the pace and distance inside the octagon, and that's exactly how the former champ will outshine his rival. UFC 287 is one of the most highly anticipated events. Their trilogy will come to an end. Adesanya will return to claim back what was his from Pereira, who's defending it for the first time. I'm sure he's ready to avenge his previous losses. I mean, in their last fight, Izzy had the pace in control up until round 4, until Pereira smashed his left hook. After a swirl of punches, he became the only one to knock him out. But the striking wizard will return with determination. And as he says himself, he doesn't throw and hope, he aims and fires. Now that's all you need to know on why Adesanya will defeat Pereira.